I would help anybody. That was me. Until I found out the guy that I gave money to bought beer with it. And even worse, got in a car accident from drunk driving. And even worse, later on he died. Now, upon hearing about his death, I began to feel bad. I began to ask myself some questions. Like, he took the money and bought beer with it. Did I really help him? I didn't mean for this to happen. Is this my fault? Or is it even possible to try to help somebody and really be hurting them? That's when I had my light bulb moment. I realized that sometimes in the process of trying to help people, we're actually hurting them. And this is done unintentionally. But the reason I say unintentionally, because it's the fact that we focus on our intentions, that we become so naive and unaware of the indirect and direct consequences of what we call help. So what is help? And how do you help a person without hurting them? This talk is on how to help a person without hurting them. So help is like a glass of water. It can be used to regulate your life and improve your functionality, but also too much of it can kill you. And perhaps we're unaware of how this concept of trying to help somebody without hurting them showcases itself in our day-to-day society. So allow me to give you some practical application to make this concept more visible. Perhaps you're a parent and who you've told yourself, I'm going to spoil my child and give them everything that I never had, and you think that helps them. But you're unaware that plants beliefs and ideas that when it sits in that child's mind, influence them to believe that they can have without working for it, which in turn, when they become adults, results in poor work ethic, which ultimately hurts the child. Or perhaps you're the person who told you're the parent who told your children that Santa Claus purchased all the gifts on Christmas, not knowing when you tell them this, there's a direct correlation between Santa Claus and kids not appreciating their parents. Hence, it's the parent that's buying the gifts, that bought the clothes, that paid the bills and did all the hard things that year. But the kids is being trained to give the credit for that to somebody else, intending to help them, but really hurting them. Or perhaps you're like one of the friends I had in North Carolina who come to me one day saying she needed a job. And so we made a couple phone calls to get her a job. And when she got the job, she come to me a week later crying. And I'm thinking these are tears of joy. But in all actuality, she said, I'm upset because now that I got the job, I can no longer be on governmental assistance. I can't get food stamps no more. And her solution in that situation was to quit the job. So let me get this straight. You didn't have money, so you needed a job. You got a job, which is good. Now, you have to get off of food stamps because you got a job. Your solution is quit the job so you can get back on food stamps. What happened in the gap between governmental assistance and her getting a job? It made me realize that some things we thinking is helping people is really hurting them. It made the concept of this talk more visible. And after that instance, I began doing crazy research on a specific subject matter. And based on what I found, it built an even greater sense of urgency to continue this subject matter or idea. What I learned is that in 2009, there was a Gallup survey done that showcased that inventoried 140 countries. And it showed that the three most popular forms of giving in those 140 countries was giving to a stranger, volunteering your time, or donating money to a charity. Now, of the three, giving to a stranger was done at a high of 44% of the time. 44%. Now, if giving to a stranger turned out this way for me, I begin to wonder how could it turn out for the 44% who was given, who could be totally naive of this principle with which we're talking about today. So I shared those stories with you earlier about people I know in critical situations, but regardless of what situation a person is experiencing, we're supposed to help them. In fact, the ability to help is what makes us human. If we can turn human into an acronym, it would be HUMAN, help, unite, mankind, and nature. Embedded in all of us is the secret desire and urge to help. It's actually an embedded responsibility. That's why when we try to help somebody, it's important for us to take a responsible help approach instead of just help. So what does it mean to be a responsible helper? Or what does it look like to help responsibly? Allow me to give you a clear definition. Responsible help is an act or service or deed committed based on self-awareness combined with the awareness of the strengths and weaknesses of the recipient. Those two make up responsible help. At this time, I'm going to show you the responsible toolbox with which we'll use to showcase to you what it means to be a responsible helper in practical form. It'll unfold itself through the acronym FAST. So let's get straight into it. F, figure out your desired outcome. At all times, figure out your desired outcome. You only have two options, growth or comfort. Now, anytime your desired outcome for a person, place, or thing is growth, your help approach should be tough love. Anytime it's comfort, your help approach should just be love. We'll explain to you momentarily why that's extremely important so you can learn how to help a person without hurting them. Next, let's move on to the A. Know your action principle. Analyze yourself. Know the message that's born through your existence. Know your purpose. Know your mission. Know what it is about you that you do unconditionally. This is extremely important in learning how to help a person without hurting them. We'll show you momentarily what it means when we get to practical application. Next, know your strengths and weaknesses. Now, your strengths and weaknesses about yourself, as well as the strengths and weaknesses about the recipient. This is extremely important because those strengths and weaknesses gives you a glimpse of the long-term and the short-term effects of what we call help. Again, we'll reveal why this is extremely important momentarily when we get to practical application. And last but not least, take honest action. Whenever you try to help somebody, there's two things that you must accept so you can be effective when you're trying to help people. Again, we'll reveal that to you momentarily. Now, we've reached our superstar moment. With that being said, as humans, it's important to know that in our mind, help and pain is synonymous. Meaning in our mind, the person who deserves the most help is based on their pain level. The person in the most pain gets the most help. Well, also, we determine a person's pain level based on the combination of their gestures, words, and appearance. It kind of reminds me of your traditional pain scale that you see at the hospital, whereby the 1 is the low pain, the 10 is the high pain, and the scale itself shows a combination of different gestures, words, and appearance to give a glimpse of a person's pain level. Well, this is actually where help becomes extremely tricky. Why? Because a child can have the appearance of a pain level 10 and nothing be wrong with them. But an adult and an elderly person can have the appearance of a pain level 1 and be on the verge of a heart attack. So this explains why it's important to take a more fundamental approach when you're trying to help a person so you can help a person without hurting them. Hence, gather this information. So at this time, we're going to break society down into children, adults, and the elderly, and we're going to apply the FAST method whereby when you see it, it'll showcase you the tools so you can learn how to help a person without hurting them. So first, children, let's get straight to it. Children, figure out your desired outcome. Whenever you do something for a child, your gesture should be to see them grow. In most cases, the gesture should see them grow. Now, in a lot of cases, when we see children, we fall in love, we get this soft feeling, and that inspires nurturing and comfort. But there's a wise quote, where there's comfort, there's no growth. In other words, any person that's compiling a child's consciousness up with the constant reinforcement of love-based actions, you can be an attributor as to why that person is not growing. Let's skip and let's go straight to the elderly. Now, in the case with the elderly, comfort or growth. The elderly have grown, not disrespecting them as far as their age, but they've grown honorably, and so in most cases, they need comfort. They need nurturing. There will be some cases, like with my grandmother, where the doctor says, your grandmother needs to get up and walk. And that same grandmother will call me and say, grandson, could you go in the kitchen and get me something to drink? And I say, Grandma, no, you get it yourself. Not because I'm trying to hurt her, but because that action actually is what's going to help her. And when it comes to adults, this age group has practically mastered the art of gestures, words, and appearances. Hence, they know how to smile and not be okay like we do every time somebody say, how are you? I'm fine. No, you're not. You're suffering in silence. Or like the billionaires do, who look like they're not okay, but they pose as homeless so they can figure out how to bless, who to bless, and who to bless effectively. In some cases, you'll have adults who have the mind of children and adults who are just as wise as the elderly. Again, all of these different scenarios offer reasons why it's important to gather this information about a person so you can learn how to help them without hurting them. Let's go to the A, your action principle. When it comes to a child in most cases is going to do what they see, not what you say. It's like the parent that goes up to their son and say, John, I don't want you to smoke, as they blow the ashes in his face. If this is the case, you have to realize that your action principle does not line up with your intended message. And if that's the case, it's important that you move out the way. Hire a coach or mentor, somebody whose action principle does line up with the message that you intend for that child. Because the more you occupy that spot, you could actually be the presence that's bringing more harm than help to that child. Unpleasant, but true. Now, in the case of the elderly and adults in this situation, these are the givers. These are the ones that's given to the world. Your action principle actually shows who you're supposed to help. If you're good at basketball, help those with basketball. If you're good at fishing, help those at fishing. Again, the flawed premise comes when you're somebody that's good at basketball, but you're trying to teach somebody how to fish. Because what happens is you're taking the spot of the person who action principle does line up with that. Hence, you're actually teaching that person how to be distracted. Again, you may not look at it that way, but you won't unless you're actively trying to learn how to help people without hurting them. Let's move on to the next one, your strengths and weaknesses. This is extremely important. It doesn't vary whether it's children, elderly, or adults. So there was this guy who I walked out of McDonald's. I don't go to McDonald's no more. But I walked out of McDonald's one day. I had a sandwich, and the guy walked up to me and said, I want your sandwich. It was my last sandwich, last money at the time. So I gave him the sandwich, and he ate it. About 3 weeks later, I see this guy at the McDonald's again, and he's like, I'm upset. The sandwich that you gave me, I got sick. I said, why? He said it had ketchup on it, and I'm allergic to ketchup. And it was another light bulb moment for me. I realized that whenever you try to help somebody, it's important that you be aware of their strengths and weaknesses, because your genuine gesture of help could actually heighten their weaknesses. And again, that's not what's intended, but that's the outcome created in the absence of gathering information. So do a little bit of research on that nonprofit. Make a couple phone calls before you donate your money. Figure out what the leader is like in that charity before you go invest into the charity. Because again, your genuine gesture of help can be heightening their weaknesses, and you don't want that, okay? Last but not least, let's move on to the T. Take honest action. There's 2 principles that you must accept when you try to help somebody. 1, you're not meant to help everybody. 2, you're not meant to help everybody. And why is that? Because there's billions of us out here on this planet whose action principle is going to line up with the service that he or she needs. And remember, when you take the spot of the person whose action principles does line up with that spot, you're actually maybe vicariously teaching a person how to be distracted through your existence. And so, if you apply the FAST method, figure out your desired outcome, learn your action principle, learn the strengths and weaknesses, and take honest action, we can promise you that your help will be more measurable, progressive, enlightening, less disheartening, and more fulfilling. Again, President Joe Biden honored me with the Lifetime Achievement Award, honored me with the medal and a certificate for completing over 4,500 hours of community service, which is a big accomplishment for me at 33. So I like to say, when it comes to help, I feel like I'm an expert. And on that journey, I've learned some people need help, some people need money, some people need food, some people need resources, some people need motivation, and some people just need to grow up. But if you ask all of those people, they're going to say, I need money. So when you go help a person, make sure you do certain research, apply the FAST method, gather that information, and that will create the basis for your help to be more progressive and allow you to be impactful and not disheartening by vicariously hurting somebody. Go out and be a responsible helper. And when you do that, that version of you can change the world. And I think that's an idea that's worth sharing. Thank you for your time.